with demand expected to come back, the question remains, does this mean the economy is back on track?
Companies now, after experimenting with offshore in places like India, Philippines, and Poland, want to bring those jobs back.
We invest in the U.S. We're the biggest exporter in the country. In the cycle we're in right now, we're creating jobs.
From Radio America, it's Neal Asbury's Made in America, the show that explores American industry, large and small, and promotes American-made products everywhere. Put Neal Asbury's Made in America to work for you.
A very big welcome to you today. I'm your host, Neal Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. Hey, Rich, man, the Democrat socialists have really stepped in it, man. I got to tell you, even the radicals are running away from them. And that's a really hard thing to do on the Democrat side of things. But think about this. They single-handedly, before even Amazon moved into New York, they kicked them out of New York. How many jobs? I mean, and I'm talking about the really good-paying jobs. Long Island City, which, definitely is in a state of disrepair. Let's face it. They need a boost. They need a shot in the arm. Amazon would have done an incredible thing there. And they said, no mas. We don't want it. We're going.
Well,
we're leaving.
It is so pathetic. It is so outrageous that right now in Times Square, those huge Sony signs that they've got that the size of a building practically, at least the width of a building, there is a rebuke of AOC. And it says, thank you so much, AOC, for killing 25 to 40,000 new jobs with an average salary of $150,000. Also missing out on $27 billion in tax revenue over 25 years. And you also lost 1,300 construction jobs annually over a multi-year build-out of the campus in New York's Long Island City. Thank you so much. They left out the part moron. They didn't say that. They didn't have that. That's up there right now. You can Google it and see it.
Can you say Miami, here we come?
And that's coming from the lefties. It's coming from the New Yorkers.
Oh, yeah.
The job creation group. I mean, how pathetic is that?
Wait till you see the reaction from the next city that, has Amazon moving to town. And I don't know. Very weird. But it doesn't end there. It really doesn't end there. And then you got this Green New Deal thing. I mean, this is even more bizarre. I mean, it is more crazy. I saw a $32 trillion price tag. Get rid of fossil fuels. I mean, just get rid of them. Every building in the country, you've got to make it a green building. I mean, an amazing thing. Medicare for all, free higher education. Everybody gets a government job. I mean, amazing, man. Amazing.
Guaranteed income base.
Is that going to work? I just don't know.
Guaranteed income base.
Hey, we're very pleased to bring on right now Daniel Turner, Executive Director of Power the Future. And this is what they are all about. The voice of energy workers pushing back on radical green groups and the ideologues that fund them. Hey, Daniel, I love it. Welcome to Made in America.
Thanks for having me on, gentlemen. Great to be with you.
Yeah, we're all jazzed up today, like we always are, really always jazzed up. And but I got to tell you, the Green New Deal, man, it's pretty scary for you and your work. I mean, how many, the workers and the money that you're making. We talked about Amazon, 25,000 jobs, $150,000 a year, average salaries. I mean, our energy industry, think of all the people that you represent. Very, very important. They just want to wipe them off the map. I mean, what's going on with this thing?
Yeah, and it's such a great talking point for the energy industry that these are very high-paying, very good jobs. Now, there's no doubt they're hard work, right? I've spent time in coal mines. I've been on oil rigs. I've been out on the platforms. You're working, right? These are not cushy white-collar jobs. But for a man or a woman who does not necessarily want to go to college, you can come out of high school and start in these jobs. And within a short period of time, a few months, you can be making six figures. And if you live in rural Texas, making $140,000 a year as an oil worker is an amazing salary that you can support your family, your church, your community. It shocks me that people like Ocasio-Cortez want to denigrate these jobs and try to take them away from people when they are the lifeblood of rural America.
Well, also, and such flawed, she's flawed, or they are flawed, because let me think, we have, Kamala Harris supported it right away. Booker supported it right away. Bernie Sanders supports it right away. I mean, you have a lot of people out there right now supporting it, a lot of kids out there. that are supporting it. But it is flawed in so many ways. Economically, it's flawed. But then on the other side, in understanding renewable fuels and eliminating fossil fuels, that's just not going to happen in 10 years. I mean, I'm sure you know John Hofmeister. John wrote a book, Why We Hate the Oil Companies, straight talk from an energy insider, former president of Shell. And John said, listen, we cannot get, with the technology we have now, critical mass to have renewable fuels and not use fossil fuels to energize this country. It's just a simple fact. And somehow no one's paying attention.
Yeah, we do not have the technological ability to produce, or more importantly even, is to store the amount of energy that would be required from renewables. We look at the things that do work for renewables, and where they work and they're not subsidized by the government, I'm all in favor. The problem with wind and solar usually is the advocates, the Bernie Sanders out there, say, well, it's actually cheaper than fossil fuels, but we don't know, because they are so subsidized by taxpayers. We don't really know how much, how inexpensive they are. But that aside, the few things that do run on renewable are small operations. No offense to the Toyota Prius, it is not an ambulance or a fire truck or a combine, right? It is not an airplane. You see stoplights that are powered by solar panel. That's wonderful. That's not a hospital. And so to have this idea that we can get rid of fossil fuels and just replace it with renewable, it's not only so unscientific, but it really is dangerous, because there are countries around the world that have adapted a type of Green New Deal. The former Prime Minister of Australia, Turnbull, was basically outed from office because he implemented a Green New Deal, and places like Sydney and Melbourne were having regular brownouts. And the Australians said, how is it that we are a major first world city and we don't have sustainable energy, electricity, because this moron of a prime minister is trying to shove renewables on us? People will suffer the real consequences of brownouts. Machines will die, respirators will turn off, there will be accidents. Are we risking our entire way of life for the philosophy of climate change?
Well, it doesn't look good for the cows. We want to get rid of the cows. If I was a cow, I'd better get a life insurance policy and run for the hills. I mean, how could you get rid of Borden's Elsie? I don't get it. No, it's very, very frightening. I mean, it's across the board. It's a complete revamping, paradigm shift, dramatic paradigm shift of the American way of life. And you know what it reminds me of, Daniel? It's sort of like the Democrats, Neal, could not get cap and trade. This kind of reminds you of this, and all of a sudden,
when they had
when
they had a huge majority,
yes, they couldn't.
In 2000,
exactly.
In the historic election of 2008, I mean, they came in, they won big.
Cap and trade.
They had the House by a huge majority. They had the Senate by a huge majority, and they still couldn't get this thing through.
But is this, Daniel? Let me ask you: is this sort of like cap and trade 2.0?
Well, Harry Reid did not even bring it to the Senate floor because he knew it was so dangerous. Nancy Pelosi lost her speakership that year in the 2010 midterms. So the difference is, you're right, it is like cap and trade, except it will. I don't think it will even have the legs it will, because the Republicans control the Senate. It is such a preposterous piece of legislation that even people like Nancy Pelosi made fun of it. She called it the Green Dream, and I don't even know what's in it. Just yesterday, Dick Durbin was on Morning Joe, and Joe and Mika were with Senator Durbin. We're laughing. He's like, what's this Green New Deal? No one's even read the darn thing. And they're all there are establishment Democrats who realize this is a deadly piece of legislation, deadly in terms of their political career. And
we're seeing that, Daniel, though. Of course, Senator Markey from Massachusetts, the co-sponsor, together with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, sponsored this legislation. Senator McConnell says in the Senate, the Republican, hey, let's bring it up for a vote. Let's bring it up for a vote.
Right.
Let's get everybody on record on this.
Exactly.
Senator Markey says, don't do that. Don't do that. That's just a Republican trick. Now, don't you typically want your legislation to be voted on? Not even he can stand behind this. Amazing. Now you got Kamala Harris, who's running for president. Now she says, now, wait a second. I believe in capitalism. I believe in capitalism. I believe in capitalism. Even the lefties now are scared of this thing. this could be the gift that keeps on giving for the Republican Party. If they can paint them as, this very, very, out there, want to turn the lights off on America, both literally and figuratively, they want to shut it down. The Democrats are going to have to run on that. I think they're scared. I think they're scared right now. They're shaking right now about having to run on this thing.
Well, I think we should continue to push the conversation, because if you want to be at the adult table, and Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez now feels like she is part of the national conversation. Amazing that getting 15,000 votes in a primary in Queens gives you preternatural understanding of the electric grid in America. I find that fascinating that all these people get elected, they get to D.C., and they have national policy knowledge of things they've never once even thought of. So
yeah, but Daniel, she stayed at a Holiday Inn Express. She did, and I think that had something to do with it. I'm not sure, but I think that was part of it, Daniel.
One of the things that annoys me so much about the Green New Deal that no one even talks about, which you gentlemen will appreciate for Made in America, and your listeners will appreciate because they make things in America, the Green New Deal never even talks about petrochemical products. If we eliminate fossil fuels, where do we get our plastic, our insulation, our carbon fiber, your smartphones, all of the rare earths that are in things like cell phones and lithium-ion batteries? All of the materials from televisions to couches to building materials all come from petrochemicals, detergent, Tylenol tablets, lotions. What happens to that? No one even talks about the millions of products that come from petrochemicals.
Just small things, Daniel. Just a small oversight. Hey, Daniel, thanks for being on the show. Executive Director, Power of the Future, the voice of energy workers, pushing back on a radical green groups that, and all their ideologues that fund them, who are really creating quite a stir in this country. And if we let them continue on this course, it's going to be painful for all of us. We've got to stop it. We've got to shut it down right now. Daniel, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, gentlemen. I love the time with you.
Thanks. Coming up, Dr. Rothman and I are going to keep this conversation going, man. We just got started. You don't want to miss it.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neal Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, a lot of headlines this week. A lot of headlines. We're gonna have Steve Forbes. The Steve Forbes is coming on our show.
I know.
And you don't want to miss it. He's going to come up here in just a couple of minutes now. We're going to have a wonderful discussion with him on a wide-ranging number of topics. But before we get there, Rich, China and the United States are negotiating. And I don't know what's going to come out of this, but hopefully a much better deal, a more fair deal, a deal that, the American workers can get excited about, the American economy can get excited about. And I believe if there is a breakthrough deal, Molly, bar the door. This country is going to really explode. We're going to really see an amazing thing here economically, like something we've never seen before.
It would be the greatest achievement next to the North Korean agreement. If he gets a peace treaty and ends the Korean War, that's going to be pretty spectacular. That's Nobel Peace Prize level. But this, if you get an agreement, even getting down to the MOU, which they're kind of trying to work on right now, is an amazing piece. And you're right. I think if that were to happen, I think the market would react spectacularly. I think you'd see a huge jump. Not only that, but the good news is it doesn't just affect the United States, Neal. This affects Western culture. It affects Europe in all the business and manufacturing that's coming out there as well. So everyone benefits from this. And the only one who doesn't benefit from this are the Democrats, because they don't want them to get this win. That's a concern.
And then, we see what's happening in Venezuela. If there was ever a basket case of socialism, And I wouldn't even call North Korea socialism. I mean, well, what they call it is juche, this sort of mystic sort of cult-like,
it's ethereal,
thing that, it's all self-reliance and we don't need anybody in the world and we're just going to do everything ourselves. We're the hermit nation. We're going to reject all things foreign.
And the leader is godlike.
Oh, amazing. I mean, even more than that. I don't know what he's like, but, I don't think on earth we've seen anything like what is North Korea.
Scary. It's a very scary place.
Very, very so.
Yeah.
But imagine if it rejoined the world in some sort of a way. I mean, wouldn't that be wonderful? But then you look at Venezuela. I mean, who, they're sort of, culture they grew up on. I mean, they built this country, a beautiful country. I've been to Caracas a number of times. Wonderful country. And, this massive wealth has all been squandered. I mean, they can't get food or medicine or anything. I mean, this is socialism at work. I mean, that is socialism. And if the world can't see the difference between right and wrong right there, I don't know what you're going to do. Now, the United States and many Latin American countries were very quick to recognize the new government of Venezuela. But you know who did not recognize? Is the Europeans, France and Germany. Many countries in Europe did not recognize that it was time for Maduro to go in socialism, in the people, in the suffering, and everything going on. I'm very disappointed at the Europeans, the Euro-weenies, for backing down on this opportunity to stand up for what you believe in. You talk about, the morals of society in being on the side of right, in rejecting wrong. If there ever was a time, why did they not recognize it?
There could be business involved. They didn't want to do that. Two, they're cowards, and that's the truth. And what's amazing is that they fought a war against a fascist dictator that to free people from horrible scenarios. Just destroying, humanitarian woes that were beyond our imagination. And you think they would have learned something from 70 years ago. Study your history, particularly the Germans, and to not recognize the humanitarian crisis that's in Latin America, in Venezuela right now, is just sinful.
So how can people like your buddy, Senator Bernie Sanders?
My buddy Bernie Sanders had his honeymoon in Moscow. You got to go any farther than
Red
that?
Square to see Lenin's tomb. I mean, and that was, by the way, back in the 60s?
He was actually, he had his honeymoon in the 80s, but before it collapsed. Before it collapsed.
I mean, when it was really the Soviet Union.
Yeah, it was
right.
Exactly.
Can you imagine that?
Yeah. No, he stayed in the Karl Marx suite.
And now you look at what's happening in Venezuela. You look at that, and how can the Democrats even associate themselves with socialists?
Well, what's interesting is that two of the junior senators, one from Minneapolis and the other one from New York, AOC, of course, who's becoming our favorite one to pick on, didn't come out right away and condemn it. They're not condemning it. I mean, look what happened with Elliot Abrams and his discussions of the humanitarian efforts in Latin America and the Venezuelans. Omar went nuts with him and accused him of being a liar. It was a horrible experience, to be perfectly honest. It is very awful. I think the Democrats are stuck in this rut right now. They're being pulled to the left. And I have to believe that anybody left with some dendrites that are working in the progressive, left side, the Democrats, are trying to figure a way out of this.
I got to tell you, in this coming election, okay, it's quite a ways from now, but they're certainly building out their platform right now. They're certainly building out their platform, and it's it's scary stuff. I don't know how they're going to run on it and win. But even Senator Harris, like I said before, has now distanced herself from this whole thing. Hey, Rich, I got to tell you, man, are we lucky? We are in for a treat. Coming on in just a couple of moments from now, the legendary Steve Forbes, chairman and editor-in-chief at Forbes Media, and we're going to have a wide-ranging discussion on all kinds of fascinating topics. You don't want to miss this. Buckle up. Stay with us.
Made in America.
sharply higher at the open, stocks continued to perform well over the course of the day Tuesday.
And I think that bodes well here over the next couple of years for having bigger demands coming to this country.
Now, more of Neal Asbury's Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neal Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Ruffin. Rich, as promised, we're very pleased to bring on with us right now the legendary Steve Forbes, chairman and editor-in-chief at Forbes Media. Many things, but also previously a presidential candidate.
Absolutely, with terrific ideas. And you know, I just watched him this morning at 6 o'clock with Maria. I don't think he sleeps.
Steve, welcome on Made in America. We're really pleased that you're with us.
Oh, good to be with you. Thank you.
So listen, man, there's so much to talk about, but, you know, Rich and I, have been talking today. We're all really jazzed up on this. The first thing, Amazon leaves New York. I mean, what a disaster that is. And this whole new, the new Green Deal, the new Green Deal, the Green New Deal. I always get those back.
Just think of it as the Green Raw Deal.
The Green Raw Deal.
All right, well, that
from our regressive friends, because literally they want to put us back in the Stone Ages. I mean, what's going on with this?
Well, talking about Stone Age, they want to get rid of airplanes. They don't like automobiles. They probably don't like horses because what horses and cows do. So getting around, just put it this way to them: you have an accident, you need to get to the hospital quickly. Are you going to walk there, hope people carry you there, hope you can call up Uber Horse to get a horse come along to take you there? You're going to be dead by the time you get any help, assuming there's any help around. And when you look at this raw deal, you would think that these people who put it together must have been auditioning for writing sketches for Saturday Night Live or a comedy show. I mean, the idea of a bridge across the Atlantic Ocean, 3,000 miles. They never heard of waves. They never heard of storms. The idea of a tunnel from California to Hawaii, so you don't need airplanes, but how about seismic shifts and little things like that? And I don't understand what they have against cows. They say cows are guilty of flatulence, but I don't think the cows do anywhere near the kind of flatulence these politicians are doing.
Yeah, no, it's exactly correct. And not only that, they would eliminate ice cream, which would really upset a lot because you couldn't have that either, I suppose. You know, it's a very frightening scenario, Steve.
Except for the fact that it's amazing because they're also far left Ben and Jerry back in the day. They excuse the fact that Ben and Jerry make a product that clogs hearts, kills people, gives you high sugar, which is now seen as a level with tobacco in the eyes of some. And but they get a pass. Get out of jail free because they support the right causes. So you take George Soros, you take Steyer, who made his money in coal but now feels guilty about it, and so finances people who want us to go back to windmills and burning wood in stoves. And windmills were great for Holland in the 1500s. But we would be in the dark most of the time without electricity. And these people seem to be already mentally back with windmills because they were in the dark already.
So, Steve, what does the Democrat Party do with this? Because even some of the more radicals, the more left people that are running for president, they're very much backtracking from this. They don't want to run on this. I think they see this is a real major problem. How does a Democrat, or how does someone who's more moderate like a Joe Biden, I mean, how can he get through a primary with this sort of thought leading the party?
That's the thing. The energy of the party now comes from extreme left activists who are untethered to any kind of reality, including Ocasio Cortez from New York and she and Bernie with their comic book socialism. And so they're all worried about primaries. They're all worried if they tell the truth, they'll get a nasty primary, and they don't want the hassle of it. But, that's why they call their health care, government control of health care, socialist medicine. They try to use the word Medicare. Why do they use Medicare? Because the elderly like Medicare. And so they want to say, this will be for everybody. they don't tell you or don't want you to realize that in the bill that they wrote, that they've endorsed, calls for explicitly getting rid of all private insurance. 150 to 180 million people are suddenly going to get stripped of their coverage from employers and go for the Bernie Sanders government plan. And we've seen veterans can testify, and Native Americans, they still call it the Indian Health Service, and it's been a scandal. They just had one the other day, this notorious pedophile they didn't throw out until very recently because they said they wanted doctors. So if they want what Medicare for all means health care for less people, less health care. Because in Europe, the thing to keep in mind in Europe is the way they control in Canada, the way they control health care costs is they ration it. You just don't get it. You need a hip replacement. Come back in 10 years and we might have a space for you.
No, it is very scenario. It's a scenario that I don't understand why most people aren't understanding. Now, why is it then, Steve? And this is the oxymoronic moment for it. Why is socialism polling better now than it's ever done in many, many decades? How did that happen? Who's driving that?
And especially with what we're seeing in Venezuela right now, which is the poster child in our own hemisphere, at our own doorsteps, right here in our hemisphere. If you want to see socialism at work, see it right there. It isn't pretty.
No, and they always say, well, that's not our socialism. And so Cuba, North Korea, Venezuela, the Soviet Union, Maoist China, they don't count. They call them, or dare I say the word Germany, National Socialism. But you're not supposed to say those things because they'll do socialism right. And the fact of the matter is they will do it wrong. And this unreality is tethered in a couple of things. One is kids are not taught history anymore, so they don't know what horrors these things were in Europe and elsewhere. And they hear socialism. Well, that sounds like social. What's wrong with being social? Socialism. That's about the mentality. And then two, we've had 10 years until very recently of economic stagnation, not moving forward. Europe has been even worse. So when you see no progress, it gets blamed on free markets, gets blamed on capitalism, not on government, which is the real villain. And you get the situation you have today, which means you fight back. This is one of the reasons why we recently came out with our new movie called In Money We Trust, amazingly on public television. You can find it on moneywetrust.org. We make the case to have the politicians through history keep their hands off money. When money is trustworthy, sound, stable, we prosper economically and socially. And when money is unsound, which we've had in recent decades, you get the kind of situation today, social tensions, economies not performing the way they should. It's very simple. Sound money, which Alexander Hamilton gave us to George Washington, combined with low tax rates, by golly, things get better.
Things work. Hey, Steve, we got to go for a very short break. We're going to be right back with Steve Forbes. A fascinating discussion. We got a lot more to go. You don't want to miss it. Stay with us.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neal Asbury, with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman, and we're having a discussion with Steve Forbes, chairman and editor-in-chief at Forbes Media. Really, really great stuff. Hey, Steve, I know that you're a big free trader, and after what we call now USMCA, I guess, Congress now has got to actually ratify it. I mean,
good luck.
No small feat. And then you got what's happening with China. So can you contrast the two, and where do you stand on both?
Well, I hope that Congress ratifies the USMCA, U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, because even though they have a little more managed trade than I'd like on the auto side, they did make some real progress on the technologies of the future, and in medicine, biopharmaceuticals, in artificial intelligence. So I hope Congress ratifies the thing. People know what the rules of the game are, brings the thing up to date, and we can move forward. The big one, of course, is China. I think there will be an agreement reached there. And I think finally we are now on a course where we're going to get dealing with China's real abuses, stealing our intellectual property, forced mergers, and things like that. And the way you enforce it is by going after specific individuals and companies, which we're doing now. You put sanctions on them or you throw them out of business. I think our European allies will be with us on that. They suffer the same thing. That gets the attention of China. When you start going after their bank accounts, going after their favorite companies, they then perk up.
Well, what about the tariffs? What's your position on the tariffs? There are those who are arguing both sides.
Yeah, well, tariffs are sales taxes. Tariff is a sales tax. While China's more hurt by these sales taxes than we are, we're both hurt. I think the course we're on now, I think most of the tariffs will come off when they do this new agreement, is that the way you go after China is not hitting each other with sales taxes, which hurt us both. Yeah, they get hurt more, but we're hurt too. Yes, the agricultural sector. I think going what we're doing now, using the Justice Department to prosecute the violators, I think that hurts them, but it also doesn't hurt us. You take a company like ZTE, which is a major telecom tech company in China, we could have put them out of business a few months ago if we made the decision that they couldn't buy certain gear they need from Qualcomm and some others. And Donald Trump made the decision he would not put them out of business as a gesture of good faith negotiating with Beijing. Got no credit for it, of course. But in the future, you can put those companies out of business or severely cripple them, and that gets their attention. That gets their attention. So I think there are ways to deal with the abuses. So, but we've already gone on the tariff course. I do believe that in the next couple of months, we will come to an agreement where the Chinese will be buying more from us, including oil and natural gas, which won't make the Russians happy, but should make us happy.
Will we get an extension beyond the 90 days so we don't put it into effect at 25%?
I think it's like March 1st.
Right. Exactly. It's coming up very soon.
It's like next week.
Yes.
I think the president's indicated, who knows what the final decision will be. They're now negotiating 2 days of intense negotiations in Washington. But if it looks like something is really in the making, a framework is in the making, the president's indicated it's not cast in stone. It's meant to get people to focus on real issues. And I think he now has enough credibility with the Chinese that they know that if they really don't come forward in the next few weeks, he will slap on the tariffs. I think he has that credibility. And so I think that we will get an agreement. And when we do, you're going to see, especially in the second half of this year, the American economy do even better.
Oh yeah, it's going to take off like a right. And in the very short time that we have left, I got to get you your comments on the Federal Reserve. I mean, what do you think about President Trump kind of getting involved in what interest rates are going to do?
Yeah, the Fed we discussed in the movie, and the Fed should have only two tasks. They should leave the economy alone, first of all, instead of treating it like it's a machine. They can drive it like an automobile, to manipulating interest rates and things like that. The word to be very fearful of, guys, in the next few months is the word overheat. They're going to start to talk about the U.S. economy overheating as if we're a machine. Economies are individuals. If your income goes up, do you feel you're overheating? Do you sweat? Your temperature goes up?
Great point.
No, you're quite happy. You're happy about it. So we got to watch out for the Fed. They have no business manipulating the economy. They should leave interest rates alone. Manipulating interest rates like rent control. Interest is the price you pay for renting the money. You think of it that way. So with the Fed, less is more. Fortunately, I think Donald Trump, and he's got some good advisors like Larry Kudlow, won't hesitate to go after the Fed. They'll get criticized for it, but the Fed the last I looked, is not embedded in the Constitution as a fourth branch of government. It's a creature of Congress, and therefore the president has every right to make his views known about it.
Very, very fascinating. Hey, Steve, man, it's been wonderful. We met before, and I remember meeting you and the comments that you had when we were on Hannity together. And once again, man, you nailed it. You nailed it. So thanks for being on the show. We'd love to get you back sometime soon.
Look forward to it and watch that movie. It's a little under an hour in Money We Trust. See it in moneywetrust.org. And I think you'll find a lot of good insights, especially with the Federal Reserve is going to be coming back and, like the monster from the lagoon. It keeps coming back.
Hey, Steve.
Very good.
Great being with you again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Coming up, Dr. Rothman and I are going to have some final thoughts for the day. I can't believe we're there already.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neal Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. Hey, Rich, Steve Forbes, great guy. Very succinct. Bam, he just hits it.
Very personable. It's like talking to someone you've known for a while. But you know what? It's amazing with Stephen? He has a great sense of humor. He's smart as a whip. He sees all. And he frames, being an editor for so long and on TV so long, he frames everything into good sound bites, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does.
Kids like it's social. Who doesn't like being social?
The thing that was interesting to me, how he mentioned that, hey, look, the Federal Reserve is not in the U.S. Constitution. It's created by Congress.
So,
it's become another monster of government, of bureaucracy. And what was fascinating, to me was he said, yes, President Trump has every right to tell the Reserve what he thinks. But yet, if you see in the media, both on the left and the right, whenever the president, has an opinion on this, he shouldn't have an opinion.
Well, that's when they say, this has never been done. Article 25. This man's obviously, off his rocker. He had the audacity to criticize the Fed. Why not? They screwed up the economy a few months ago. We took a huge nosedive because the head of the Fed made a comment like, well, we're going to do it now, we're going to do it again, then we're probably going to do it 2 more times before the end of next year. Whoa! The market said, holy gosh, sell. Get out right now.
Why telegraph that? I don't know.
Well, that's playing with the economy, isn't it?
Yeah.
But what's amazing is that it is under the auspices of our government. We can do something about it. Of course, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. And then, hey, look, this is a headline this week. We need to talk about it. U.S. debt hits record under Trump. The Republicans are mum.
The record level of debt, and we're spending like, drunken sailors right now. And you've got to, look at this and say, well, wait a minute.
But are not the Republicans supposed to be the party of responsibility and kind of getting this under control?
But then why do Republicans cave all the time? Because they have no backbone. I don't think the Republicans, and this is where I think the problem comes in, don't have the gumption to take on the Democrats head on and say it's not going to happen. And yet, conversely so, the Democrats will stick it to the Republicans any which way they can. Even by assumption, passing, a Medicaid, the health care bill in the middle of the night at 3:00 in the morning. It's just an astounding scenario.
But, we got to be careful here. George W. Bush comes to town. Hey, look, I'm going to, be responsible here. We got to get our house in order. We got to, we can't spend money we don't have. We can't mortgage the futures of our grandchildren. And Social Security is going to be broke. And, the whole country is going to be broke. I'm going to deal with it. And he leaves office with this massive increase to our national debt. Well, I should say an increase to our national debt. And then it was Barack Obama who comes in and doubles it. It took more than 200 years
to get there.
To get to 10 trillion with a T, 10 million. Yeah. And then when he leaves, it's 20 trillion.
Well, just FYI, the number we were searching for.
And now Trump is adding to it.
Yeah, and 1.4 trillion debt was the problem with 2018. That was the number.
1.4 trillion. That's, 10 years of that, right? Hey, but that does pale in comparison to the Green New Deal, which is $32 trillion.
Do they have check coverage? You know, like you have at SunTrust and your other banks, like my checks get covered no matter what. And do they do that? They have that, I think. You know, Phil would know that. There's no question he would know that. And David Brim would know that.
And if you insufficient funds, it draws from your credit card.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, yeah, it's probably attached to something. Oh, that's right, it's attached to the U.S. taxpayer. That's right. Goodness. We got that one under control. No, I think it's very, very, very interesting to see where we're going to go. I mean, there were a couple of things that the president got locked into in trying to make things go forward. He wanted to get the military money. In a budget proposal from a year ago, he wanted to get the military funded $780 billion because of the scenario that they were in as a result of the last administration. To get that, he had to give on the other side. And then you have, listen, don't make the mistake that all Republicans do not, they don't love this president. There are a lot of never Trumpers out there on the Republican side, and they're working against him every day. And I think they're part of this debt problem as well. Listen, people have to understand this president is assaulted on all sides constantly, and it doesn't stop during the night. It just keeps going. I'll tell you what worries me. I'm going to shift gears before we lose time.
And what bothers me about that is and please get to your point, but it should be about policy, not the personality.
Oh, no.
Too much of this is about the personality. It's all about the personality, not the policy. We got to talk about policies in this country because that's the only thing that matters.
Well, that's putting America first. But right now, we're in this nightmare on Elm Street right now. Rod Serling could have written this because we are more concerned with the politics and the appearance of the politics and who wins and she wins and they lose and they win, then we are worried about doing the right thing. We're not doing the right thing across the board. This president's trying to do the right thing, and it's very, very hard. Look, if we're in a scenario where the media can't even tell the truth about what's going on, and this is a topic for another moment. We'll get back to this in the weeks coming up. We're in a bad place because it's the manipulation of the truth, and it gets back to this surveillance capitalism. Very scary scenario.
Well, Rich,
just saying,
we're out of time, man. What a show, man. It was so passionate, so charged up today. I love it. I love the feeling. But unfortunately, the feeling's over for another week because we're out of time. But don't worry, we're going to be back again next week for another adventure of Made in America, where we never stop fighting for your jobs.